Hey guys, Comic Boom here to review comic book sales for the month of March 2020. It is a Sunday. I figure I'd have some Corona of my own, which I normally do. I normally read comics on this day. I'll be doing a live stream later with Dark Knight Nation and Comic Joe, and we'll be discussing the hero's journey and whether or not the hero's journey has died in comic books, whether or not it still exists. And what exactly is it, and why it is still important? And in any event, I did a review of comic book sales for February of 2020, mostly for DC. In fact, only for DC, and it was depressing for DC. And it's interesting to review the comic book sales for March of 2020, which we're going to go through here. I'm going to share the screen, and we're going to be going through the Comic-Con data. Primarily for DC, but we're going to have fun looking at all the data. The fact of the matter is that comic book sales have not been particularly great, even before the pandemic, certainly not for DC. So things have been a concern for DC even prior to the pandemic. And I frankly see things maintaining that and staying the same soon thereafter. I really don't think things are going to change all that much as things progress, as we work our way out of this pandemic. But let's I'm going to share the screen here, and just going to share the screen, and I'm going to show this Comic-Con data. And it's important to note here that in March, the top 5 sales here, as you can see, it was Spider-Woman came in first, followed the next 2 high sales were Batman. Batman did very well, and of course, March was the 750th issue of the sale of Flash, and then coming in at number 5 was Donny Cates' Thor. So that's really not surprising. Spider-Woman has got more. Certainly, Spider-Woman had more variant covers than you could throw a stick at. As a part-time comic book speculator, I pretty much ignored Catwoman, Spider-Woman. I mean, at some point, it's just nonsense. It's an exercise in futility trying to guess the specs when you got a million different covers, and it's just crazy. And the lack of creativity on the covers too is what really stood out for Spider-Woman. You have the exact same pose, and then you got stupid random covers where they just change your outfit. I mean, come on, guys. You're professionals. Try to be a little bit more creative. But hey, that's just me drinking Corona. But about March, let's talk about March. Month of March, as it says here, it did see the commercial impact of the COVID-19 outbreak. Beginning in North America, by mid-month, spring conventions had been called off, and many businesses were either having to close or cut off hours to slow the spread. Retailers ordered 37 million in comics, graphic novels, magazines from Diamond during the month, almost exactly what they bought in February. And that total was 15% lower than in March of 2019, which was fueled by Detective Comics 1000. So it's interesting to speculate here that I know Mr. Jackson, the one who puts together this Comic-Con site, but for the Detective Comics 1000, which came out last year, really sales for March of 2020 would likely have been the same, or perhaps even a little bit more than they were last year at this time. The pandemic, the economic impact of COVID-19 really never hit until mid-month, actually the 3rd week of March. Now, just go on here. Now, this site, comics during the COVID-19 outbreak, shops adjusted orders placed before the outbreak and placed fewer orders as it progressed, while week 4 debuts had lower orders than any other week in March. The large number of releases made it the highest volume week of the month. So really, I know for my comic book shop, my comic book store was open for all of March, closed in May. So I got all my comics for March, and going anecdotal evidence, from what I can tell, most people got their comic books for March. And so I really think that the data here for March 2020, I think it's fairly decent. What I like about this site now is that they've adjusted the numbers, and we're going to go through the numbers now. And One of the things that really stands out here, I did the top 50 again. I just wrote down the DC, the top 52 DC, and you know, the top 10 DC comic books. The top two were Batman. The third was Flash. Fourth was Robin's 80th, which sold 60,000 copies. The fifth selling DC comic was Deceased, coming in at number 14, selling 56,000. And the next DC one was number 17, Batman White Knight, selling 52,000. I got to tell you, you really see the decreases here, because by the time you hit the number 10 selling DC comic, it only sells 38,000, and that's Batman and Superman, and it's pretty much all Batman, Superman, and Justice League, which is not surprising, but at the same time somewhat depressing, because you think they'd have a little bit more variety, but they just seem DC continues to go back to the same old stream, the same old chestnuts as they always do, and I guess that's just the reality. And you know what? I'm starting to think that maybe that's a good thing, because at the end of the day, maybe what happens is that we need to have more variety here. You know what I'm saying? Hey, Skip and Tosh. Hey, Tevya. How's it going, guys? I'm just reviewing. I'm sharing the screen here and just talking some comic book sales, because I'm bored out of my mind. I got tired of bagging and boarding comic books. I was bagging and boarding All-Star Squadron comics and some old Batman and Detective comics, and I figured, well, I better maybe do something a little bit different here to break the monotony. But it's interesting here that when you look at the breakdown here of comic books, look at Batman Curse of the White Knight issue 8, sold 52,985 comics. Now, I know this is a Batman comic, but it's been said before that, DC's talked about giving Sean Gordon Murphy his own Murphyverse, his own universe, and they bloody well should. The guy's at 52,985 issues. Now, there was a time when that was considered, average about 10 years ago, but now that's actually substantially better than the bulk of DC Comics, because that's number 6. That's DC's 6th best selling title, and that's on its 8th issue in its 2nd volume. And that really speaks droves and speaks to a lot about the success of Sean Gordon Murphy. And dare I say, let's just put it out there. As much as I like Rebirth, maybe it's time you just maybe let creators do their own thing with the DC characters. Because when you have success like that, look, it seems to be working. And I know it is Batman, and anything Batman arguably sells. I think that would take away something from Sean Gordon Murphy if I was to just blanketly say that. I think that he's done a lot of good with Batman, and I think he deserves his own universe. They might as well give it to him. Interestingly enough, Deceased and Killables coming in at number 14 at 56,650. That's not doing bad either. But the Robin 80th anniversary coming in at number 12 here, and that's not surprising, 60,000. But even that, Batman and Robin, you'd think Robin's 80th would sell more than 60,000 units or 60,000 issues. It was really depressing. And Flash, it's good to see Flash up there. Shocking that Batman would sell more than Flash, but then I shouldn't be shocked, because issue 90, 91, we have that huge punchline, the big punchline debut. James Tynion IV done such a good job with that. And as a tribute to that, I just want to share with people, I'm going to stop the screen sharing for a moment here. And I have a banner here that I was going to share if I can find it. Yeah, here we go. Yes, I thought I'd share this. I put a Punchline and Catwoman banner together. I did a Catwoman video a while back. I had some fun with Punchline. I have a feeling Punchline is kind of going to be like a miserable woman, a miserable villain, where Harley is always smiling. I think Punchline's always going to have a look of misery on her face. But alas, maybe that's good. The Joker smiles enough for the two of them, right? In any event, I had a little fun with that. Now, I want to go back. I'm going to share the screen again. I want to go back to talk about the Comicron sales. In particular, when we get to after Batman Curse of the White Knight selling 52,985, we end up with Detective Comics next on the list. You have to go all the way down to number 32. So the 17th best-selling comic is Batman Curse of the White Knight, selling 52,985. And then the next time you see DC on the list, you literally have got to go all the way down to number 32, which is Detective Comics, which is really bad. Because when you think, so you go from 52,000 sales to 42,000 with Detective Comics here. And it's just incredible that you have that huge drop, so that you got DC has no comic books selling between the 42,000 and 52,000 range. And it's interesting that you got those huge drops there. It's really depressing. And then you have the next drop from DC, Detective Comics. The next one is Justice League at 34 at 41,000. And then below that, Justice League again at 40,000. Now, Robert Venditti's done a reasonably good job with Justice League. He's tying the whole he's sort of tying things over until we get to, of course, the I guess Death Metal, which Death Metal will formally actually complete the story, which began with Scott Snyder with his 39 issues of Justice League. So Venditti's done a reasonably good job, and he's got good story arcs that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And so at least we're getting some entertainment there. Interesting, though, that we go below. We have coming in at number 39. We got Batman and Superman at 38,236. And now one of the things I want to look at here. Tevya, it is sad and depressing. Tevya, hey, Comic Book University professor, how's it going? I'm just shooting the SHIT because I'm bored out of my mind. And so there you go. I don't know if this will, Gee, it's almost like DC Comics has no continuity in their stories and nothing is lining up. Giving Bendis everything is always a terrible idea. We're going to get into Bendis, and because I got some, there's a theory I got on Bendis. Well, it's not a theory. It's actually not a theory because it's a fact. That's right, Dark Knight. That's absolutely true. A little self-promotion here. Lawyer by day, comic book sales by night. I'm reminded of the immortal words, my favorite line in Indiana Jones 4, when his son says to him, to Indy, you're a teacher, and he goes, part-time. And so that's what I do. I'm a lawyer. I'm part-time. But in any event, I have a theory about Bendis. And my theory about Bendis, and I'm going to go and bring up the Comicron again here. My theory about Bendis is that if you actually look, Bendis' sales are actually one of the higher ones for DC. And that's what's pretty sad, because when you just focus on the DC sales here, it's actually incredibly depressing, because Superman comes in at number 11. The first Bendis title comes in at number 11 for DC. It's number 40 on the list, and that's Superman here at 37,000. Here it is, right here. It's in between the two yellow marks here. Superman, 37,271. That's Bendis's first title. That is depressing. And by the way, that is a combination. I believe that is a combination of both. They stopped giving Superman a second title or a B cover for March. I think they just gave up trying to make that thing sell. I mean, I think it was a waste of the variant cover artists' work in any event. But as you can see, I mean, when you figure that now 41 is low down on the list, or number 40 is low down on the list for Superman, but remember that that's actually the DC's 11th highest selling title for March. And this is, again, I mean, I'm not gonna allow the pandemic as an excuse here. I mean, because this was the same sort of general trend that we saw in February, and most of the sales by the end of March were already sold. I know anecdotally, most of us managed to pick up all our sales for March, And so there's no excuse here for per sales in March by anybody, as far as I'm concerned, if the goal here is to sell as many comics as possible, which of course it bloody well is. And Corona break. Ah, my God. In any event. So yeah, so that's depressing. Now it's coming in after number 40. We have to jump all the way down to number 46 to get Action Comics. So Bendis, then look at the drop. I find that interesting. 37,000 on Superman and 33,000 for Action Comics. I predict that, I find that most people who collect Superman collect Action. So why are the people, what are the 4,000 people doing? The 37,000 that are buying Superman, 4,000 of them aren't buying Action Comics. I can only guess it's because of John Romita Jr.'s art. That's the only thing I can think of. And and it's really, really, it's depressing. That's exactly right. Thank you, Tevya. You've expressed it. And yes, you're absolutely right. His Legion of Superheroes is down. His Legion of Superheroes is actually number 7, is DC's 17th best-selling, which sells only 29,000. But I will say this about Bendis. All his comic book sales, they seem to be within the same area. So he's got a good placement. So Bendis could be a good dart player. You know what I mean? He's got good placement. You can throw your 3 darts. You get them all in the same general area. He might be really good at darts. And that's pretty good if you got good placement in comic book sales, provided that the comic book sales are on the higher end. Now, sadly, given the reality of comic book sales in general, Bendis's comic books are still higher up on the list than substantially most. I mean, we're still in the top 50. So generally speaking, we're not in horrifyingly bad territory, but we are in very disappointing territory, given, I'm sure, the price tag that they paid for Bendis. Now, Bendis, along with other writers, will have the excuse of saying, well, there was a pandemic and that likely affected people's willingness to go out and buy my Superman in Action and Legion of Superhero comic books. But, well, there's always going to be the evidence pre-pandemic, and the evidence pre-pandemic is that people aren't riding the Bendis train. So there's that reality. Now we're going to keep going down here. The next one down the line, we got 47 is Green Lantern season 2, selling at 32,816. I got to tell you something here. I said this before. Grant Morrison is someone who should be getting his own universe. Grant Morrison's in his own universe here for all intents and purposes. I know in theory this Green Lantern, his Hal Jordan, is technically in the mainstream DC universe, but he's really doing his own thing because DC editorial is not keeping him on a tight leash at all. And believe me, if you've been reading Grant Morrison's Green Lantern, you know exactly what I mean when I say that. And at this point, I don't even get upset with Morrison anymore. It's like a psychedelic. It's like getting mad at your friend when he's high on coke. I mean, how can you do that, right? And I mean cocaine. You just can't do it because they're in another universe. So it's kind of hard to criticize them by saying, where did you come up with this nonsense? It's like, well, you know what? You might as well just snort a couple lines and join them and enjoy the ride. That's Grant Morrison. Give the guy his own universe. Corona break. And move along. Now, we get into Year of the Villain here, coming in at number 48. And again, Year of the Villain overall. Year of the Villain is 48 overall. Number 14, that's DC's. Year of the Villain is DC's 14th best-selling comic. Now, selling 32,624. Now, Year of the Villain, Hell Arisen. This has got to be a catastrophic disappointment for DC by any metric. They had an entire year promotion on this huge event. Sadly, I don't know why they called it Year of the Villain. They should have called it 2 Year of the Villain. And a double Year of the Villain. They just can't seem to end this thing. And just when they want to put this thing out of its misery, this Year of the Villain storyline, a pandemic comes up to delay it. And so we're sort of dragged through hell. It says Hell Arisen. Indeed, we are still in it. Hell was arisen and we're still living in it. And good God, do we want it to end? Bring on death metal, man. Bring on some hope. Bring on some Wonder Woman. It is what it is. But I'm at this point, we really need something here. I guess I'm up here in my loft and I'm getting a little bit stir crazy. And I just want to, I just want to sort of wallow in self-pity. Skip and Tosh. Good seeing you, my friend. Grant Morrison is definitely on his own planet. Yes, he is. Yes, he most certainly is. But it's enjoyable sometimes to visit somebody when I don't mind if they're on their own planet. I don't even mind if they're smoking something that I don't know how to pronounce. The fact of the matter is, if it's a decent story, I'll go along with it. Tevia, God, You're the Villain was pointless. Damn it, Dan Didio. Well, I can't say that. I don't know if Year of the Villain was pointless. I think it had a lot of potential. It had a lot of potential, and I think that it was just squandered potential. They didn't work with it as well as they could have. What they should have done is they should have had more of genuinely unique takes on the villains. There was nothing unique about the villains. The concept of villains getting new powers and new being revitalized by a manipulative and powered up Apex Lex Luthor is actually a fairly cool idea, but they didn't do anything with it. The only villains in Year of the Villain that I thought they handled very well was Sinestro. I liked his one-shot. His Sinestro one-shot was good. I thought Shazam was probably one of the better and more interesting characters of the Secret Six. And there was one other villain that I thought had potential, but I can't remember, which basically tells me that I must be wrong, because if I can't remember the villain's name, how good was it really? And that's a test. That's a test that I have. If I can't remember it, then how good can it possibly have been? I could blame it on the corona, the beer, not the virus, but I'm not going to do that. All right. So number 15, DC's 15th best-selling title was Flash, number 751, selling 30,740. I got to tell you, I'm an outlier here. I'm not enjoying Flash. Haven't enjoyed Flash really from the beginning. But you know what? At least it's a consistent seller. And let me tell you something that Joshua Williamson does right. Even though I'm not a big fan of his writing per se, he does seem to have a passion for the character. And I find that his plots are he retreads the same plots. He's inconsistent with Barry Allen's characterization. He does one thing with Barry and then goes back to a previous characterization for Barry Allen, and then has Barry Allen bitch, whine, and complain, and then Barry Allen forgets lessons that he learned in a previous issue, and then relearns the same lessons again. But at the very least, it's sort of like if Joshua Williamson is afraid to do anything that actually moves the character forward. But if this makes any sense, let me put it to you this way. If you don't know where you're going and you're comfortable and people are buying your comic book and you're a coward, you might as well continue to write the same cowardly crap you've been writing, because if it's selling, don't do anything that's going to take any chances. That's Joshua Williamson. Narratively, he's a coward. He's done nothing. He hasn't moved the Flash forward. He's done nothing interesting with the characters. His most interesting storyline was the 6-issue God Killer storyline at the beginning. He's done really nothing profound since then. The introduction of the Turtle was an embarrassment to the medium, I thought. Really, the Turtle. Brief. Anyways, I know that sounds harsh, but that's how I feel. This is all I can say is that Joshua Williamson is a prime example. When you got guys like Bill Maher going on TV, telling people, making fun of comic books, you can understand why they're making fun of comic books when you read the quality of comic books nowadays between Flash and Bendis and all this stuff. None of this is moving the medium forward. No chances are being taken. No, nothing. There's nothing has any meaning anymore. They got to bring back death. They got to bring back evolution of character. They're just not doing it anymore. And frankly, it's just kind of depressing. I'm really hoping that with this pandemic, we're going to get some actual movement of characters and some actual movement of plots. Maybe if they cull the herd a little bit, maybe if we have a culling of the herd, that'll help things out. Comic Book University, yes, Professor. He says it's a complaint you've been making for a while. I've been watching. I've heard some of your complaints. Yes, The Flash is a good comic, but Barry is written to be stupid, incapable of learning how to use his powers after all this time. That is exactly it. And I admit I'm a negative Nelly when it comes to Flash, and I deserve to be called out on it. And usually Comic Joe is pretty good at that. And I just get frustrated because when I see the same, and I'm old school, maybe it's because I'm too damn old. I've been reading comics for too long. And I remember something Mark Waid said to me way back in 2006 in Calgary Comic Con, Calgary Expo. Mark Waid said that he told me that every comic book he felt every generation deserves to feel like there's a comic book for them, that a comic book is speaking to them at some level. And so every time I criticize a comic book, especially because like I'm in my 50s now, so it's like I gotta keep telling myself, well, maybe I gotta grow up. maybe I gotta grow up and say, hey, maybe this comic is not written for me. And that's kind of where I am with the Flash, because the Flash it's just something where, I think of Barry Allen as somebody who should have learned a lot of those lessons beforehand. Barry should be one of the mentors. He's the Big Seven. He's the Justice League. They should be the guys that are giving advice, not the ones that are constantly relearning the lessons that the Teen Titans are. Like, to give an example, it's at some level, it's incredibly stupid when you think about it, to use your term, Professor, that we've got characters like the Flash learning the same lessons that Damian Wayne is learning in Teen Titans, or Crush, or these teenagers. And it's kind of embarrassing. And yet he's supposed to be a mentor. And I think it all comes down to execution and structure and having a Bible. And DC needs a Bible like Marvel. And they have to have a hierarchy of wisdom for their characters. And they don't seem to have it. And it's really kind of sad. But I digress. Let's hop back into it here. After the Flash, the 15th highest selling DC title was The Flash, coming in at issue number 54. And then at number 50, that was 52. 54 was Flash 752 at 29,000. Incidentally, guys, about a year ago, Wonder Woman was selling about 38,000, and Wonder Woman's down on the list. There's been a gradual drop in DC sales of at least 10 to 15,000 across the board in their mid range. That's been disastrous. And that's been not what DC has wanted, because I know DC has made up some of those sales with the sales of young adult stories with Catwoman, Batman, Harley Quinn, Raven, Teen Titans, et cetera, et cetera. They have that young adult line. And but it's still depressing that the DC was hoping to sort of, well, to use the phrase in these pandemic times, DC began to cull the herd, so to speak, last year, when they sort of, they've only got like 52, they've got about like 50, I think a total of maybe 60 titles in March that they were selling, much less than Marvel. And, it's really sad to see that their sales haven't gone up. You would think that if you're going to cull the herd, you want your smartest. It's the same reason why I drink alcohol, because I know alcohol kills brain cells, so that only my strongest brain cells will survive. So it makes sense for me to drink more. That way I'll have the strongest brain cells, right? This is what you call deep sales analysis by Comic Boom. In any event, you know what I'm saying. There's got to be higher sales. If you're going to cut back on publishing your books, make bloody well sure that the comic books you're publishing have higher sales. Otherwise, it's complete nonsense. Yes, thank you, Professor. Yes, great points being made by a terrible mentor. Yes, well, I live to serve. I live to serve. Yes, and right. So now we get into number 60, which is Batman's Grave, which is the 10th best-selling DC comic book was Batman's Grave. How appropriate. The top 10 starts with a gravestone selling 28,000. Who would have thought that DC's 10th best-selling comic book would only be selling 28,000 in March of 2020? But hey, good news, you can blame it on a pandemic, right? It's incredible to me. But while we're on the subject, let's talk a little bit about Marvel here. Look at their debut for Outlawed only at 27,000. They got to be a little disappointed in that, because that was something that I think was supposed to be sort of like their equivalent of their Teen Titans with their former champions line. I think that deserves higher sales. I think I'm really surprised by that. Savage Avengers only at 27,811. Captain America, good grief, Captain America 26,000, 26,997 deserves better than that. I shouldn't say that I don't like the story, but you would think even on, I think all those 26,000 are probably Alex Ross covers, because the only full disclosure, I have continued to collect Captain America. I haven't read the last 13 issues, at least 14 issues maybe, because I just buy it for the covers. I buy it for the spec. Iron Man 2020. I got out of Iron Man. I completed Dan Slott's run, and I haven't. And I don't know what Iron Man 2020 is doing. Resistance is a must, guys. Resistance is a fantastic comic book. It's written by J. Michael Straczynski. Fantastic comic book. It's written by a new comic book company that actually Axel Alonso actually started up, and he got Straczynski on it. Resistance is a story about a fairly serious pandemic and people with various powers that survive the pandemic and come out of it. But it's very well written, and well worth checking out. I spoke earlier about Wonder Woman here. Wonder Woman coming in. I think this is the 11th best-selling comic book. Wonder Woman. Oh, Batman's Grave was number 18, not 10th. Sorry about that. Wonder Woman is 19th. Wonder Woman issue 754. 750. Wonder Woman 750. Selling 25,109. Coming in at 68 on the list. 25,000. I remember 20 years ago, Wonder Woman selling 25,000 issues a month. Wonder Woman, I'll say this for her, she is consistent as hell. Absolutely consistent as hell. Well worth. So I'll give her points for being consistent. But Steve Orlando is writing Wonder Woman. I at least like what he's doing on Wonder Woman. I like the fact that he's bringing in the 4 horsewomen of apocalypse. He's giving us a lot of action. I think the story, I'd like to have the story flushed out more. I mean, the idea of the 4 horsewomen of apocalypse with genocide and devastation and Von Gunther. These villains are well known in Wonder Woman lore, and they need more development. Unfortunately, Steve Orlando, I don't think he's going to have enough time to really develop it. But the sales of Wonder Woman are actually, I would argue, are consistent with the history of the character over the last 20 years, quite frankly. When she's at her high mark, it's usually when Greg Rucka is writing her, and she's at the 46,000 mark. And then she really began to take a nosedive when J. Willow Wilson went on the title, and it just went down ever since. J. Willow Wilson, by her own admission, didn't really have a lot of direction, or wasn't really feeling the character to as much as she would like. And I'm putting some words in J. Willow Wilson's mouth, but I'm also going by how it was written, and it was a little bit all over the board. I think it's appropriate that Jane Foster Thor is selling akin to Wonder Woman. I actually think Jane Foster is better written than Wonder Woman is, and it's a more enjoyable comic book. I would recommend Jane Foster Thor. I read that regularly. Superman Villains. Look at that. Superman Villains, 24,403. Another Bendis title, ladies and gentlemen. Bendis. So that's coming in at it's number 20. Super Villains here is 20th. DC's 20th top-selling title, Superman Villains. I thought this was a I was disappointed in this. I thought, maybe I'm making too much. I'm sure I'm making too much out of this, but I thought focusing on Toyman a little bit he's a pedophile, or at least one of his incarnations. He's a pedophile. Having him be the character villain that is redeemed is just a dumbfoundedly stupid thing for DC to have done. DC editorial shouldn't have approved it. But it's quite clear that DC editorial doesn't have any say. They just nod their heads to Bendis. And that's just the way that is. I don't like what they did with what's his face, the Thanos character, Mongol there, having Mongol killed off by his son and taken over by his son. That was just a cheap way, but of having the writers ignore Mongol's continuity so they wouldn't have to talk to editors. That's what that's about. But guess what? I listened to an interview, guys. I listened to an interview with Matt Fraction on John Citrus Word Balloon, and apparently that Mongol story was Matt Fraction's idea, and he's really, really proud of it. Really proud of it, because he wanted to have a moment when the old Mongol was realizing that, hey, maybe there's something more to Clark Kent giving up or Superman revealing that he's an ordinary guy, and that maybe there is something to not just being a power hungry asshole. And, and then all of a sudden, just as he has this revelation, boom, he's killed by his son, and the cycle starts again. And so there you go, guys. That was supposed to be deep writing. Just when we have some potential for evolution of quality storytelling, we have two steps back, one step forward, two steps back. So depressing and just really bad. Catwoman 21, A Mercy Kill. This series is finally over. But for a series that was written very terribly by Joelle Jones. And I say that with love, because I love her art, and I loved her. Oh my God, what was it? I got the 2-volume set there of her Assassins woman there. What's her name? Anyways, I can't remember it. Maybe somebody in the chat can remind me. But in any event, yes, Mongol. And yes, Tevya, you agree Jane Foster is good. I agree. Why am I forgetting Joelle Jones' independent series? It's about an assassin. I'm trying to forget who it is. I'm trying to remember who it is. Oh, it's kicking me up inside. In any event, Joelle Jones, great artist. Catwoman is one of those series where, because it gets by on its variant covers, it has for many years. I actually should thank GC for Catwoman, because I remember buying 2 issues at a time, 2 copies of every issue of Catwoman. And when I did my Catwoman 80th anniversary video, I have 2, sometimes 3 copies. I bought 2 to 3 copies of each issue that came out, because I loved Adam Hughes covers at the time, and I'm so glad that I did, because good Lord, I'm sure I'll unload. I got the equivalent of about 2 collections of that Adam Hughes run for Catwoman, and it's even three sets on some of the particular issue, sequences of the better covers. So it's nice to have. I can't complain. And this Catwoman run had some decent covers, but again, forgettable storyline, to say the very least. Jumping next down, the next DC on the list is Justice League Dark, coming in at pardon me. No, we have Nightwing. Nightwing coming in at number 75, which is actually DC's 22nd best-selling, 23,248. Not much to say about Nightwing. He's always there, but he's not doing much. He was shot in the head, and even though he's healed, he's still. It's amazing how you can shoot somebody in their head and put them through the ringer, have them lose their memory, change their personality, change their characterization. Essentially, you get to write a brand new character when you shoot an existing character in the head. That's what DC done. They shot Dick Grayson. They shot Dick Grayson. They used that as a justification to essentially change his character, change his name. He could have done a vast amount of things differently, and still it didn't seem to resonate with fans. I actually didn't mind parts of this run. I thought it was okay. I thought Dan Jurgens did a decent job sort of putting lipstick back on the pig, because it did drag on too long. But this is one of the issues when you know something's going to be temporary. I don't know why writers don't understand that if you know something's going to be temporary, for God's sakes, have an arc, have a story that has an ending. Don't drag it on forever. And I think it's reflective of, again, both cowardice and insecurity by writers that are afraid of writing good stories that have endings, because if there's an ending, then they're afraid they're going to be taken off the title. And so they want to embrace the Jeff Johns, have everything end with a cliffhanger, have nothing end. And that way you have to stay on the title to finish a story that you don't really have an ending for. Isn't that right, Brian Bendis? Good grief. By the way, what happened to Rogol Zaar, Bendis? How come Rogol Zaar still alive, but they'll execute Jor-El? I'm just throwing that out there. It's okay. I'm almost on my second one. All right. Going back here. Yes. All right. Paul Costa. Marvel needs to cancel half of their output. It was a waste of manpower. Paulo, that is true. I can tell you this, that Marvel has, in fact, and I know you know this, Paulo, they have, in fact, laid off a great many of their people. And I do know that they were in the middle of a hiring spree. And, of course, that was put on a hiatus until further notice. And it's sad. If you look at the number of titles that Marvel has on the list, which we'll get to, if you look at the number of titles that Marvel has on the lower part of the sales, it's absolutely extraordinary. The number of titles that Marvel has selling under 20,000, 23,000, say, is incredible. I mean, look at this. We got Ghost Rider, 23,000, Symbiote Spider-Man, Black Cat, 23,000, Star, 22,000. Ghost Spider, 21, Doctor Strange, 21, Conan, Transformers, Punisher Soviet, 19,000, Sumerian, Queen of Black Coast. I mean, it's really, you get down to the bottom, near the bottom of the list, and you see a large number of Marvel comic books, and that's just par for the course. Now, I'm not sure, now, this is prior to the pandemic. The pandemic hit at the end of March of 2020. That's the sales charts that we're looking at here. But it is interesting to note that does seem to be Marvel's tactic, clearly, for the last year, is just to glut the market. And they were on a hiring spree. Let's be blunt here. I know this as a fact, that they were out wanting to hire more talent, more editors, and clearly they had the titles that they were just putting out there. And one has to wonder, obviously, they want to create as much diversity and new characters as possible, and to ramp up that intellectual property, because they want to make sure they own all those new ideas for characters, so that they can capitalize on them for movies moving forward. But it's also sadly the case that the quality of the storytelling shows. But moving down the list here, we get number 95 on the list. We get Supergirl at 17,000, Aquaman 17,000, Lois Lane at 17,000. I mean, good grief. Well, let's say a quick hi to Bendis again. How's Young Justice treating you? Well, you're under that 20,000 threshold mark. There was a period of time when you hit the 20,000 that you could pretty much be guaranteed to be canceled. I think it was last month in February, or when I reviewed February sales, I laughed that Basket Full of Heads, I think, outsold Young Justice in February. Young Justice now has the claim of fame. It sells more than a comic book called Basket Full of Heads. Congratulations, Bendis. Congratulations, man. Good job on Young Justice. I mean, it was a long battle, but you got ahead a Basket Full of Heads. At least I got something to celebrate here. I got to tell you, sometimes it goes down a little rough, but you know what? I'll give it one more time. One more chance. But yeah, there you go. All right. So let's Tevya, isn't Supergirl getting canceled? Yes, it is. It ends at issue 40. That is the case. It was a mercy kill because, no matter, in defense of writer Jody Houser and in the previous writer, Mark Andreyko, the DC would not let Jody Houser or Mark Andreyko do what they want to do for the title, because it's always beholden to other storylines, usually by Bendis, and then for the Secret Six nonsense. And it's really sad. It's very unfortunate, but it is what it is. Yeah, your comment about Dandidio, awful idea. Well, I'm gonna Tevi, I'll disagree with you on that. I don't think it was an awful idea what they did with Nightwing. Although most people, I think Tevye would agree with you, not with me. I thought it was a good idea. I just thought that they never capitalized on the storytelling possibilities that would go along with it. But I think Dan Jurgens did a relatively decent enough job, sort of salvaging the storyline and bringing Nightwing back into the fold, or rather Dick Grayson back into the fold. Okay, run back down to the list here. I got just a comment on Vampirella. Vampirella comes in at number 99 on the list, selling 17,048. Vampirella is a series that keeps slowly rising on the charts for sales, and it has for years, and it's published by Dynamite. And I really love, now I'm a part-time speculator as well, obviously. And I love the Vampirella story. I love the Vampirella comic book. I love the variant covers. And I've been collecting Vampirella going back for like 20 years. And one thing she's got some amazing, fantastic cover artists. So it's another thing where, quite frankly, traditionally, if there was ever a comic book that you could buy that you never read the story, but you bought it for the cover, it was usually Vampirella or Dejathoris, or Warlord of Mars. And I got all those. I got a huge Vampirella collection, Dejathoris, but the reality is that I don't have all the covers for these titles for Vampirella because there's just too many of them. Dynamite publishes so many titles, it's insane. But it is something to bear in mind that it's. I would encourage people to get it if you have an extra $5 a month to put toward a comic book just for a cover. I would look into Vampirella or Vampirella and Betty and Veronica with Red Sonja. There's like a Red Sonja, Vampirella, and Betty and Veronica crossover series. It's on issue 10 right now. It's fantastic. Each issue has like 10 variant or like 5 or 6 variant covers, and they're being very creative on the covers. They're just absolutely gorgeous. I wish I should probably show some here. They're just fantastic. But in any event, I would check them out. They're rising in sales, but bear in mind, I say rising, and they're only at 17,000. When there's 17,000 for Vampirella, bear in mind that if on average they print about maybe 5 different covers, and usually there's an A through E cover, and then they might have the 1 in 25, the 1 in 10. So even for the 17,000 standard, a portion of that is still, they still might have like 1/5 of that might be one cover, another fifth will be another. So it's still worth getting. So if you pick the right cover, and I know art is subjective and that's always tough because you never know what's going to be, necessarily sell more, but dare I suggest that art is not always that subjective. For example, I knew 10 years ago that Lucio Perello's covers were going to be fantastic and garner more money. That's why I picked them up. That's why I love my Lucio Perello collection, because it's fantastic. I knew at the time. I knew when I was picking up Adam Hughes Catwoman covers, why I bought 3 copies of every cover when Adam Hughes was doing the covers for Catwoman 10 years ago. I wasn't an idiot. I saw it. Art might be subjective, but you don't have to be a moron. There's some good art is good art. It's not like a Jackson Pollock special, which is puke on a piece of cardboard, which is nonsense. It's modern day art is ugly. I mean, the modern day art movement is awful. It sucks. It's horrifying. It's bad. That's why nobody likes it. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the art world no longer has any respect, because it's, people, we got billionaires paying millions of dollars for genuine garbage, and sometimes actual garbage, because it's art. I'm not making that up. You can Google that. But in any event, I digress. Okay, now I'm at the 49 minute here. Yes. Quick comment here. Lois Lane ending, Tiv? Yeah. Yes, it's a series. It was meant to end. It's going to end at issue 12. It's written by Greg Rucka. I'm an outlier on the Lois Lane series. I actually really enjoy it. I like Greg Rucka's writing. Greg Rucka is also writing the Old Guard, Force Magnified, or Force Multiplied, Old Guard Force Multiplied. The first volume of Force of Old Guard is being made into a movie, so it's well worth checking out. And yeah, but anyways, continuing on here now. John Constantine Hellblazer, it hasn't been canceled yet. It is, I will note that, wow, here I skipped. John Constantine is at number 36 on the DC list. Jump through a lot here. I noticed that, wow. Yeah, after Lois Lane, we had Batman Beyond selling 16,000. Batman and the Outsiders selling 16,000, not 198. Justice League Odyssey, 16,894. This is really depressing because Justice League Odyssey, I think, is a really great story. It's introduced some new characters. It's just depressing to see some of these relatively well-written stories not get the attention that maybe they deserve. And it's always interesting, when you look at the spec market, the difference between the spec market and what people are buying is sometimes quite jarring. The spec market is really big on Batman Beyond right now. They love Batman Beyond because it's the first female Batman, and or the first female Batman Beyond. And really, it is a good series. I don't know why more people don't buy it, but I guess people, I guess that's the power of the indie market here. But even the indie market, you look at Image. Look at the top 300 here on the side, right here. Top 300. Image used to be selling 10% of the market was Image. You could rely on that. And then you'd have like 6 and 5 for IDW and Boom. And now look, Marvel's completely dominated. DC has gone down because they're not selling anything anymore. They've cut their publications. And then Image is down to 5.89%. And what's funny here is that I actually think Image Comics, the quality of Image Comics now is better than it's been. Well, I actually don't think I won't say Image is better than it's ever been. I'll say that it hasn't decreased in quality of their comic books. I'm really enjoying Image. I'm enjoying IDW. I'm loving Boom. I'm loving Dynamite right now. I'm loving Dark Horse. It's interesting that, now that's units. But even if you look in top dollar share, Marvel is still at almost 50% of the dollar share that's going out there, which is really surprising to me. So, guys, for those, I don't talk a lot about speculation here, but just to sort of say things that are kind of obvious from an economic point of view, that you don't have to be a genius in math to know that from a speculation standpoint, if you manage to pick up a comic with Dark Horse, Dynamite, and Boom, and the ones that Netflix are really picking up, focus on AWA, Dark Horse, Dynamite, Boom, IDW, and Image. Those are comic books that they're not selling a lot. So when they are made into movies, or they're bought by Netflix or whatever, those are the ones that you really got to watch out for. Because Marvel here is like Marvel. At some point they're going to be in the movies, but This is now is the time more than ever. If it's a great time, an exciting time to get into the spec market. If you just look at these numbers here, and Archie in particular, and I look at these low ones down here. Good God, Archie comics only 0.24%. Anything, whether it's Archie Afterlife, which isn't published anymore, but whether it's anything with Archie, quite frankly, Sabrina or Jughead Hunger or anything like that. Jump on it, man, because it's all there. It's well worth picking up, and you're gonna get something back from it. Now, speaking of Something is Killing the Children, this is a Image comic, 14,365. James Tynion IV, he's on fire here. Now, his Batman is at the top of the charts at selling hitting the number 2 and 3 spots. Something is Killing the Children, James Tynion IV for Boom Studios. Fantastic. 14,365. Let's face it, that's not much lower than that's not a heck of a lot lower than the Lois Lane or the Aquaman. And for a horror comic, that is absolutely incredible. And I should give a shout out to Joe Hill, the Joe Hill Comics line, because we got Plunge coming in at 109, which is Plunge is selling more. Number issue 2 at 16,328. Something Killing the Children at 14,000. And we have Dollhouse is selling 15,000. You got to wonder if it's sad that James Tynion IV went to Boom Studios for his Something is Killing the Children. I'm surprised. It's almost sad that he never went to Joe Hill and they didn't work out an arrangement with them, because Something is Killing the Children would have, I think, done very, very well in that line as well, and maybe even have really helped that line. So I think that's an editorial misstep that, but maybe James Tynion IV, you don't know what the contracts are, but when you look at Something is Killing the Children, it's a horror comic. It sounds like it's a story that just reads for something that should be part of the Joe Hill line of comics, the Black Label Joe Hill line of comics. And the fact that it isn't is really kind of surprising to me. But going down here, Red Hood Outlaw, I think it's time to put this guy to sleep. 14,158. That's deplorable. Red Hood Outlaw should be selling more than that. That's really disgraceful. That's DC's 40th top-selling title. So Red Hood Outlaw, number 123 on the list. It's 40th for DC. DC's 40th top-selling title. We're at 123, and DC still is still not even at their top 50. Now, bear in mind that just for what it's worth, DC's 50th selling title comes in at 172, and that's Amethyst 2, selling at 9,534. Which is really deplorable. We haven't got that low yet, but just to let you know just how far the mighty have fallen here. In the top 50, the top 50 titles, DC only has 14 comic books in the top 50. That's really sad. Only 14 comic books that DC has in the top 50. The rest are pretty much dominated by Marvel and some Image. That is horrible. Absolutely horrible. And again, you can't blame that on a pandemic. You can't blame that on a pandemic at all. I tell you what, Marvel coming out of this pandemic, they might be culling their herd editorially and maybe creatively somewhat by focusing on their better, more proven talent like Donny Cates and what have you. But they're much better position coming out of this pandemic than DC is. And when you think that Jim Lee coming out of this pandemic, when you remember that when they've got something like Daphne Byrne was one of the comic books that they were selling at the end of April here. I mean, Daphne Byrne in March, to give you an example, sold 13,182. So, for God's sakes, Jim Lee, if you want to make a mark by, helping retailers out by releasing some DC comics sooner than May and do it in April, putting Daphne Byrne there at the forefront was kind of pathetic, to say the very least. Maybe you put a little bit more forethought in there, but I know you were thinking more about distribution and working with Midtown Comics and DCBS, but still, man, maybe you should take a PR lesson, or maybe take a lesson in PR, because that didn't work out very well for you. But in any event, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe at 133, 13,146. Hawkman, good God, Hawkman, 12,987. Carter Hall, my friend, you need a drink more than I do. Holy moly, talk about the low woods. See what I did there? Anyways, yeah, Hawkman, 12, just under 13,000. Hawkman, buddy, my friend, Robert Venditti, he deserves better than this. His Justice League sells well. I don't know why people who like his Justice League aren't checking out his Hawkman. Low Woods is another horror comic. It's selling, I think, reasonably well for a Joe Hill comic. Going down the list, we're hitting some low territory. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Jennika, the first female turtle, Ninja Turtle, 12,326. That's actually not bad. Not bad. If you're a speculator, getting the first 12 issues of that, probably not a bad idea. Red Sonja is another comic book that I've collected for decades. 12,156. I always say, if you're a speculator, just get it for the cover. It's well worth it. Jimmy Olsen's Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen. Matt Fraction didn't really talk much about this on John Sutras's word balloon. And I'm wondering if the reason why he didn't talk about it is that he's forgotten that he's writing it, just like everybody's not forgotten that he's writing it as well. Good grief, 12,104. Matt Fraction, my friend, you need a drink. Or I don't know, maybe you're drinking too much when you're writing it. I don't know what it is. I know I wouldn't want to try writing when I'm drinking Corona. But that's just me. Well, I can't overflow it. Anyways, Vengeance of Vampirella. That's actually my favorite title, actually, at the moment for Dynamite. Really good. Tear It by DC. I don't even know why they published that. I don't even know what it's about. Ruby. Ruby is a comic that I don't quite understand. Sorry, I'll go back there. There's a bunch of characters that would benefit of turning all titles into Walmart anthologies. Paulo, my friend, you are 100% correct. One of the things that I breezed over here, Paulo, when I was, is the fact that there's a lot of dollar comics, Batman and Justice League, Swamp Thing, are on the titles for March that are being sold at Walmart. And frankly, they're not only are, even as from a speculator point of view, they're better to buy from a speculator point of view, from a collector point of view, and frankly, from a storytelling point of view. From what I've read so far, I can't get them. I've got some of them digitally. Most of them I can't. So I'm going on the basis of anecdotal evidence, but that's a very good point. Let me see. But the real difficulty is convincing the American audience to buy anthologies on a regular basis. That's very true. I think that's one of the reasons why a lot of us are speculating that maybe the best thing to do is to simply get, change the packaging of the comic books, maybe going more on the European model or the Italian model. Or I know this is something, Paulo, that you're more experienced at commenting about, certainly more so than I am. But I would love to see a different type of fancier, just more creative packaging for comic books, perhaps more, collect 6 or 12 issues so we have a full story and that are more regularly put out, and just something to catch the eye of the readers in the bookstores, because they're not coming into the comic book shops. And of course, with the pandemic now, who knows? I mean, I like to think we're going to have a resurgence and maybe just a little bit of a renaissance on multiple business fronts coming out of this pandemic. Fingers being crossed. I mean, I don't need another reason to drink. All right. I'm going to make a spec pick here, guys. My next comment here is going to be on Last God. It's only selling 10,897. I love this title, Last God. It's 150th on the list. I really like it. It's DC's 47th highest selling title, Last God, selling at 10,897. That is number 47 for DC. Last God. Good God, talk about depressing. But it's a great series. I really like it. And I hope they're still gonna put out a Last God sort of a Last God Bible, so to speak, to help explain all the characters. It's very complex. It's very Game of Thrones like. Not quite as complex as Game of Thrones, but it's interesting. It's well written. I love each individual issue. I have them all. I love all the issues of Last God because it takes me a long time to read. It's rich. It's filled with a lot of information on the front and the back, and I feel like I'm getting a lot of bang for my buck. It's got maps and it reminds me of Game of Thrones, and it's challenging, and it pulls me in, and it's not for the faint of heart. If you're someone that doesn't have the patience, and if you're used to reading a Bendis comic that takes 5 minutes or 5 minutes to read because nobody's actually saying anything of substance, and the characters aren't doing anything, and the artists are just drawing talking heads because they're not giving anything of quality by the writer to script to illustrate, well, then you don't want to pick up Last God. Last God is brilliantly illustrated. The dialogue matters, the substance, the words matter that the characters say, and the plot line is significant. And more specifically, it's actually a character-driven as well as plot-driven storyline, which is increasingly rare nowadays. Killing Red Sonja, I picked this up. It's not bad, 10,770. Another spec pick. I would suggest picking this series up. It might even be of significance if she does in fact die, which I know, of course, it's comic books. There's no death, but there might be some significance to this Red Sonja's death in this series. You never know, and it would be. I think it's going to be a decent spec pick. Artistically, it's a little bit different on the covers as well. So it's they're trying something different artistically on the covers. Not as provocative as they usually are, so that might also make it stand out a little bit more. Jessica Jones, Ant-Man, again, low sales for these. I think these are originally digitally produced comic books. Okay, sorry about that. Incredible Hulk facsimile edition. I mean, isn't this incredible? Incredible Hulk 182 facsimile edition selling 10,511. Boy, oh man, the gift that keeps on giving. Hulk 181 and 182. I mean, there are so many of these things that have been CGC graded. The original 181 and 182 of Incredible Hulk. Now the facsimile editions continue to sell. Incredible. It just goes to show what a popular story can do. Die, sex criminals. Chip Zdarsky was on he was on a YouTube yesterday that I watched with Donny Cates. Donny Cates and his wife reviewed a couple of comic books. Donny Cates reviewed Spider-Man Life Story while his wife reviewed Archie Afterlife, and it was actually quite a good podcast. It was a good live stream, and Donny Cates had Chip Zdarsky show up, and they got into they did a little squabble again, and it was actually really hilarious. I would suggest you guys do that. It was on The Advocate. Type in Advocate on YouTube here, and it's Donny Cates, and it's well worth the watch. Jump ahead where Chip Zdarsky ends up on the stream. It's actually quite funny, quite comical. In any event, continuing down here, guys, the sales here. I mean, I'm going to jump down here to Terrifics. Terrifics is number DC's 48th best-selling title. 48th best-selling title, 164 in the overall list, selling 9,931. Terrifics now. DC's Fantastic Four does not have fantastic sales. Good grief. Even Fantastic Four sells more than the Terrifics, and that's saying something. But there you go. 2020 Machine Man. That's got to be, good God, that's depressing. Dejah Thoris. I love me some Dejah Thoris, man. She's still worth picking up, Dejah Thoris, just for the covers alone. That's actually fairly respectable for Dejah Thoris, because nobody actually buys Dejah Thoris for the comic book. I always figure whenever I buy Dejah Thoris, I'm spending $3.99 for a cover of a woman that barely has her breast covered. That's pretty much it. But it's, it looks good. Sonic the Hedgehog here. Guys, I don't know, Tevya, maybe let me know, man. Sonic the Hedgehog, I've got in Brooks, Alberta here, there's a guy who's got a box of comic books, and all it is Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't collect Sonic the Hedgehog. I could probably get the entire box for $20. It's like a long box of Sonic the Hedgehog comic books. But I'm just not into Sonic the Hedgehog. But I'm thinking, as a speculator, maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I should pick that up. I mean, if all of them, they always seem to have low sales, Sonic the Hedgehog. So maybe that's foolish of me. Maybe I should be picking that stuff up, because that to me is that's kind of low. Yeah, you say you think Sonic the Hedgehog's really good. Well, maybe I'll pick that up then. I'll see if I can get a deal for the box, because I really don't know anything about the comic book or the video game. But for those of you guys who are into video games, my buddy there, Tevya in the stream here, you can check out his channel. He plays a lot of video games, and he plays a lot of them on live streams. And we also talk about Super Sons, and we're members of the Fortress of Attitude. So you can check out Tevya. And let me see here. I'm approaching the end here. I don't want to go too long. I didn't want to go much more than an hour. Spoke with Paulo about the Dollar Comics. Paulo, the Justice League here, 1987 reprint of Justice League, 9,318. Again, dollar comics here. I mean, wow. Now I don't those. It's a prime example of. I mean, when you have a reprint selling, as Dan Didio bitched and whined and complained about before he got fired, but he had a good point. It's pretty sad when reprints can sell at half of what your new comics sell. That's really, really bad. But in any event, I'm going to give some recommendations here to Vampirella Red Sonja. Pick up this series. It's a low print run and it's really good. I mean, it's actually well written too. I actually quite enjoy it. Two sexy women kicking each other's asses while kicking other people's asses, and they have nice asses. So sit back, relax, and read a Vampirella Red Sonja comic book. Why? Because, and it's a pandemic, and it's not like you're working. All right, so now we get into Marvel's, these things here. Black Panther Agents of Wakanda, along with Marvel's Avengers Captain America, and Marvel's Spider-Man Black Cat Strikes. All of these series here, selling at 9,000. They're worth picking up. I do regularly get the Spider-Man. I thought it's very well written. I really enjoy it. The stories are self-contained. And they're enjoyable reads. I'm enjoying it more than the regular Spider-Man title, to be quite honest with you. And because they're a lower print run, the speculator side of me says they're going to be worth more anyway. In fact, I guarantee they're going to be worth more. They just will be. And every now and then, the 1 in 10 variant ends up on my retailer shelf, and he only puts a $10 price tag on it, and I always pick it up. And incidentally, it was that Marvel Spider-Man number 11, number 10 that was the Venom variant that's now worth about, I think it's between 100 and 150 bucks now. And when you think that you can do the math, when they sell 9,000 comics of it, and there's 1 in 10, there's only 900 of that one variant. Well, then you're getting something that is reasonably rare, and that it's reasonable to spec on it. Dollar Comics Swamp Thing again, 8,735. These things are worth picking up too. More Dollar Comics. Look at this, Lucifer hasn't been canceled yet at 8,514. Issue 18 of Lucifer, and Lucifer is number 52. Incidentally, I passed it. 172, way back up here. Amethyst number 2 is the 50th top-selling DC title. Amethyst number 2, 9,534. Right below The Dreaming. I mean, Neil Gaiman has got to be just, bitch slapping himself. I mean, The Dreaming. I mean, the Sandman universe. Who would have thought The Dreaming is only selling 9,572? That's awful. It deserves to sell more than that. That's actually a decent series. It's not bad. Now, granted, I have to admit, I did stop collecting it at issue 10. But, because I wasn't really it's only because I wasn't in a Sandman, and I got other titles, and I had to make some tough choices. But in any event, wow, just the low sales across the board here. By the way, guys, Red Sonja, Vampirella, Betty Veronica, 9,004. I love this series. Man, the covers are fantastic. Well worth checking out. So going back down here again, I talked about Sonic the Hedgehog. Lucifer selling really low. Books of Magic, again, this is again the DC, the Sandman universe, 8,294. Whatever is happening, whatever the popularity of Sandman was, it's gone. Let's just be blunt. It's just not there anymore. With the failure of Vertigo initially to begin with the whole failure of Vertigo and the whole reasons why that might have failed, because I think editorially and creatively, I think they made some very questionable choices. I think a lot of the books of Magic and Dreaming may have suffered as a result of being affiliated with the creative ending of Vertigo, but that's just speculation on my part. Starship Down here, issue 1. This is another 8,245. That's actually a decent series. I actually quite enjoyed that one. I would actually suggest you guys get it. It's actually quite good. Starship Down, written by Justin Guillaume Paoli and Andrea Moody. Good, They find a starship frozen in the Arctic and some Neanderthals frozen inside it. And then the rest is a mystery. Woohoo! Wow. Okay, so here we go. Join the Future. I picked up this by Aftershock. I would recommend Join the Future. It great cover. 8,069 sold. Again, specs, guys. If you're just collecting for the, if you don't collect a lot of comics, but you collect 5 to 10 comics a month, try to have at least 1 or 2 indies in that group, and pick one at the bottom of the list. And try engage in a little bit of comic book speculation. And again, it's cause and effect, and it's supply and demand. Pick a good series like this, and when you have a low print run like this, it's well worth it. I remember back in the day when Harley Quinn's original first series came out of Harley Quinn. I looked at the sales all this time. I did the same thing back then. I just never had a YouTube channel, and I don't even think I watched YouTube back then. But anyways, I looked at the sales data, and there was, Harley Quinn was selling, anywhere from 12,000 issues to 15 to 18,000 to 22,000 issues a month, and nobody was buying it. And I knew it would be worth money one day, and it is. The whole run is worth money because supply and demand, and that's just the way it is. Common sense. Now I'm going down here again, farther down on the list. I mean, a couple of things I get. I'm going to just reference Rick and Morty, 7,416. I got Snot Girl issue 15 at 72.89. I picked up Artemis and the Assassin. It sells 7,192. That deserves to sell more. Folk Lords, 7,102. Deserves to have higher sales than that. Wow, a lot of these here. Marvel Action Spider-Man, another great series. Marvel Action Spider-Man. It was actually Marvel Action Spider-Man. That's volume 2. Volume 1 is where you could have the 1 in 10 variant, where that Venom issue, Marvel Action Spider-Man number 11 or number 10 of volume 1 sold so well. This is volume 2. I'd recommend picking up Marvel Action Spider-Man. It's a great series, and it's such a low print run. Take care of it. It's going to be worth money someday. I guarantee it. House of Whispers here. Good grief. This is the other low-selling Sandman Universe for DC title, 64.75. That's atrocious. Good grief. Agretsuko. A lot of hype for this one in issue 1. I picked it up. Thought it was horrible. I don't recommend it. Issue 2. Low sales. Doesn't surprise me. It deserves low sales. It was that bad. Marked. Great series. Deserves much higher sales. Fantastic covers. Basically a story about tattoos that give mystical powers that are channeled through tattoos on people, on young teenagers. It's great series. Marked. 5 issues long. That was 5 was the final issue. But I'd like to see that again. Red Border. You see a lot of these by speculators. Old Guard Force Multiplied. Again, guys, I would pick this up. It's well worth it. It deserves higher sales than that. Wow, Marvel Action Avengers, Money Shot, Jim Henson, Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, another great series. So many great series down here that no one's getting, and I don't know why. Wow, Bitterroot, Vampironica, New Blood. I picked that up. Anything with Archie Comics I pick up, because low sales, man. You're guaranteed that. I mean, there's 1,900 comic shops in North America. With this pandemic, you can take 25% off that. If these numbers are going to be halved, who knows? It might be rare. If you've picked up any of these lower selling titles, some of these you might not see the next issue, guys. You might not see the next issue for some of these lower selling titles. So this might put these titles higher in value when they eventually come back, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years down the road, or maybe they won't ever come back, increasing the marketability and the spec value of these various comic books. I mean, wow. Reaver, Billionaire Island, Tataris, Predator Hunters 3, Marvel Action Captain Marvel. I mean, I got to tell you, look at that, low, 4,800. That's low. It's worth picking up these titles if you got some extra cash lying around, which I know in the pandemic you probably don't. But James Bond, I love James Bond. I pick up James Bond whenever I can. So low selling, and wow, great spec books, well written, and a lot of good writers, big name writers write James Bond. I mean, good God. It's surprising to me that these don't get higher sales. But in any event, I'm going to just, going down again, Valiant, Visitor, deserves higher sales than that. I don't know, Quantum and Woody. Birthright from Image. Birthright is another Joshua Williamson title. Issue 42 only sells 36.60. This guy writes The Flash. And the irony is that Birthright is infinitely more entertaining than The Flash. And here his Birthright is, as his indie title, selling 3,660. Unbelievable. But it's wrapping up. And I think that might even be the final issue or soon to be. But in any event, a lot of these, Butcher of Paris, fantastic series, 33. These all deserve much higher sales. Genlock from DC. Good God. I didn't even put that on the list. 3305. Wow. That's worth getting just because it's so low. Wow. Unbelievable. But guys, I'm just going to I got to go down to the end of this. This would go on forever. What does this list go to, by the way? It's like, look at all this stuff. Powers of X. Oh, that's still selling way back down on the list. Batman, Curse. Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, guys, I don't need to go on forever here, but it's overall the conclusions about these sales is that at the end of the day, okay. Sorry, I got some questions here. I got a question. Is there any Western cowboy comics you can recommend? Also, I recommend that similar of comic called Turf. I got a question. Is there any Western cowboy comics that you can recommend? Well, a Western comic, Jonah Hex's Omnibus comes out this month. It comes out actually this week. The Jonah Hex Omnibus, which reproduces Jonah Hex's first appearance in Weird Western Tales and for how many issues? Anyways, that's worth picking up. It's about $75 American. It's pricey, but it's well worth it. I haven't picked it up, but I'm looking forward to it at some point. I got a budget for it now with this pandemic, but it's definitely something that's on my list. Western cowboy comics. Beyond that, I'm trying to think anything that has a Western theme to it. I'm drawing a blank right now. Maybe somebody in the chat can answer that. Personally, I wish Williamson was going to write Wally West again because I miss Wally West being part of the Flash. Yeah, that's a wish for a lot of us, Tevya. Paulo, is Jodorowsky's Son of El Topo published in English? If so, I'd recommend that. Jack Dynamite. That's something that I love Westerns. I have a lot of Western comic books from back in the day. I even have something called Rio, which is even a collector's item now. Great series. And in fact, I got something that I had drawn by a famous artist. I'm going to just show it here. Yeah, there it is. I forget who the artist is, but I won this in an auction, and I can't remember who this is. But man, it's gorgeous. I love this. It's fantastic. But yeah, I'm embarrassed. I should know more Westerns. I can't believe there isn't a Western comic book right now that I'm. No, I guess no. It's just Jonah Hex. It's just Jonah Hex. Sorry, Jack Dynamite. Is there any comic book set in the eras of 1920s and 30s? There is one called Jason Aaron. Jason Aaron, by a trade by Jason Aaron, and that called Beware the Creeper, and that's set in the 1920s. It's a Vertigo story, and that's set in the 1920s, and that's well worth the read. And this is before Jason Aaron became really famous. Jason Aaron went from, after he wrote Beware the Creeper, it was, I believe, Beware the Creeper was Jason Aaron's first DC work, and he followed that up with Scalped, I believe. And but that's you might want to check that out. That was quite good. And another 1920s and 1930s is a great series called oh man, I did a review on it. Oh man. It's a gangster story called oh my god, it's gonna kill me here. It's about the dollhouse. I think it's called the dollhouse. It's called the dollhouse. It's because I did a review on it, and it's really good. And I should probably try to Google it here, but anyways, I'll try to put it in the description below. But it was really good. Yeah, Beware the Creeper was amazing. Professor Skip and Tosh says East of West Jack Dynamite. Check it out if you haven't. Skip and Tosh, good recommendation. I just finished. There's a bundle. What do you call it? A jumbo bundle, or whatever you call it. I paid like $30 Canadian, and I got all of East of West, all 9 volumes of East of West, really cheap, digital. You can buy online. Proceeds go to charity for the pandemic. And fantastic series, East of West. Very good recommendation. And that does kind of have almost kind of a dystopian sort of Western feel, like a cowboy, almost like a Mad Max, but it has a cowboy, and one of the characters is kind of a cowboys from the old West, because East of West is about American. It's sort of built on different incarnations of the American Civil War, post-Civil War. Humble bundle. Yes, thank you, Professor. My corona is interfering with my pronunciation, although that's just an excuse. I can't pronounce it the best of times. Yes, another one. Tommy Gun Wizards. Thank you, Professor. Good God. Thank God for people in the chat. Tommy Gun Wizards is a really great story. It has to do with magic and the 1920s, and where good Lord, I'm drawing a blank again. Oh my God. Anyways, what is the why is my mind going? I'm gonna have to who is the gangster in the 1920s? Somebody help me out in the chat here. Okay, because it's an hour and a half. I gotta go here in a bit. I got another chat I gotta go to, but just a moment here. I am okay, sorry about this. Right. Yes, Tommy Gunn was about Al Capone. Yes, Al Capone, and he was kind of he's corrupted by magic, and it's okay, Tevye. I have no idea either. But in any event, I'm a fan of gangster comics. One of my favorites is The Darkness. I bought the OG game with the OG first comics, the first 4 for $80. Nice. I will have to keep that in mind. But guys, I gotta go. Thank you for showing up for the chat. I was just shooting the shit because I appreciate the fact that you guys are clearly as bored as I am, and you're willing to listen to anybody. Clearly. So thanks for showing up, Skip and Tosh, Professor Bill, Paulo, Tevye, all you guys. Thank you so much for showing up, and I'm going to sign off now. And yeah, I'm going to do at about 4 o'clock Eastern Standard, or 4 o'clock my time. So that's about 6 o'clock, I believe, Eastern Standard Time. 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I'll be on a chat on Dark Knight Nation's channel. We'll be talking about the hero's journey. And I have read, if you can believe this, I actually read a 92-page breakdown comparing the psychologist Jung talks about the hero's journey. And Is the hero's journey still relevant in comic books anymore? Is it even exist? If you have a story that never ends, can you have the hero's journey in soap opera storytelling? Can you have that? That's the question. And is it there? Whatever happened to the hero's journey, is it dead? Is it still there? To what degree have writers abandoned it? To what degree, if they haven't abandoned it, what form does it appear to be taking in comic books? That's the question. And we talk about Joseph Campbell, or we're going to be alluding to all kinds of things, I think, and we're going to be sounding probably much more intelligent than we are, or much more dumber than we hope to be, or some combination of what I just said. So check it out, guys. And that'll be on Dark Knight Nation's channel in about 2 hours. And talk to you later.